The Byzantine Empire stood as one of the most fascinating and enduring civilizations in world history, a beacon of culture, trade, and politics that carried the legacy of Rome far beyond the fall of the Western Empire. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, it was Byzantium that inherited its mantle, striving to continue its legacy while building something entirely its own. Though we often think of Byzantium in terms of religion, wars, and emperors, one of its greatest strengths was something less dramatic, but equally important: its ability to connect the world through trade. And among these exchanges, none were more valuable than its ties with the distant and mysterious East, particularly China. Trade between Rome and China did not begin with Byzantium. Long before the Western Roman Empire crumbled, caravans were already moving along the Silk Road, carrying goods between the Mediterranean world and Asia. Rome craved exotic luxuries: spices, incense, precious stones, fine leather, and above all, silk. The shimmering, delicate fabric became one of the most prized materials in Roman society. Adored by aristocrats and emperors alike, despite its beauty, silk created a deep problem for the Roman treasury. For every bolt of silk that entered Rome, vast amounts of gold and silver flowed eastward, creating a trade imbalance that worried Roman leaders for centuries. But silk was irresistible, and when the Byzantine Empire rose from Rome's ashes, it inherited not only this obsession, but also the responsibility of maintaining those lucrative trade routes. For Byzantium, trade was not merely about luxury. It was the lifeblood of its economy. Ships laden with goods sailed across the Mediterranean during the calmer seasons, while caravans trudged along dusty roads linking Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. By carefully navigating these routes, Byzantium transformed its capital, Constantinople, into one of the greatest trade hubs the world had ever seen. By the 6th century, Constantinople's bustling markets offered goods from nearly every corner of the known world. Covered streets led to rows of shops where one might find amber from the Baltic, furs from the north, ivory from Africa, and silks from China. The empire's position, straddling both Europe and Asia, allowed it to command trade routes and accumulate immense wealth. Yet, paradoxically, trade was not always respected within Byzantine society. Many aristocrats, priests, and scholars looked down on merchants, often portraying them as greedy or deceitful in literature and art. Commerce was seen as beneath the dignity of the nobility, who preferred land ownership and political power. But despite this disdain, the Byzantine state could not ignore trade's importance. Recognizing the risks of leaving it entirely in private hands, imperial authorities involved themselves deeply in commerce. Officials monitored weights and measures, regulated markets, and even subsidized merchants, ensuring that cities were always well supplied. Traders who suffered losses at sea or from raids could sometimes receive state compensation, while smugglers faced strict punishments at customs stations. Over time, however, wars began to change the empire's approach. As conflicts with Persia and later the Arabs disrupted traditional trade routes, the state loosened some of its grip, allowing private trade to expand. Still, one constant remained: silk continued to bind Byzantium to China. For centuries, the Romans had no idea how silk was made. They knew it came from China, but believed the fabric grew on trees or was produced in mysterious lands at the edge of the world. It was not until the daring monks smuggled silkworms out of China, hidden in hollowed-out bamboo, that Byzantium discovered the secret. This act of espionage allowed the empire to establish its own silk industry. Workshops in cities like Constantinople, Tyre, and Brytus began producing silk garments, which were soon sought after across Europe. Even so, Chinese silk remained a prized commodity, and trade with China did not stop. The greatest obstacle to this commerce was geography. To reach China, Byzantine traders typically passed through Persian-controlled lands or sailed via the Persian Gulf. This was a problem, for Byzantium and Persia were bitter rivals, often locked in bloody wars. During Justinian's reign, when conflict with Persia was at its height, merchants were unable to travel safely along traditional routes. Determined to keep the flow of goods alive, Justinian forged alliances with neighboring powers such as the Sassanids, who allowed Chinese goods to pass through their territory. Byzantine merchants also began using alternative paths, crossing Central Asia and dealing with groups like the Avars, Turks, and early Russians. These networks not only secured trade, but also extended Byzantine influence deeper into the continent. But trade was never cheap. Maintaining Constantinople's grandeur, the Hagia Sophia, the imperial palaces, and its fortifications required immense resources. Wars, especially Justinian's ambitious campaigns to reconquer Italy and North Africa, strained the treasury even further. Silk, therefore, became more than just a luxury. It became a tool of statecraft and survival. Justinian, ever shrewd, decided to monopolize the silk trade. He ordered his officials to buy up raw silk, funnel it into imperial workshops, and fix the prices of finished products. Private merchants, especially those in Tyre and Berytus, were devastated. They could no longer compete, as the state consumed all available supplies and undercut their prices. Some historians accused Justinian of crippling private enterprise for greed, but others suggest he had little choice. Round the same time, Byzantium was struck by the Justinianic plague, a devastating outbreak believed to be an early form of bubonic plague, possibly carried along the very trade routes that brought silk from China. The epidemic killed countless citizens, crippled the economy, and brought workshops to a standstill. In such chaos, Justinian's monopolization of silk may have been a desperate attempt to stabilize a collapsing industry and ensure that the empire retained at least some control over this vital commodity. Even with these challenges, Byzantine trade with China and the broader Far East continued. Chinese goods remained highly valued, while Byzantine exports such as glassware, jewelry, and embroidered fabrics found eager buyers in Asia. Artifacts from Byzantium have been uncovered as far afield as Japan, Korea, India, and Sri Lanka, evidence of how far its influence stretched. In Thailand and Southeast Asia, too, traces of Byzantine trade appear, showing the extraordinary reach of the empire's merchants. In the grand markets of Constantinople, this global exchange was on full display. Merchants from Arabia, India, Russia, and even China mingled, bartering and exchanging stories as well as goods. To walk through those markets was to experience the world condensed into one city, where East met West in a dazzling spectacle of culture and commerce. Yet, for all its brilliance, this global network carried risks. The very same routes that brought wealth also carried disease. The Justinianic plague showed how interconnected the world had become. Centuries before the modern age, silk, Byzantium's most treasured commodity, was both a blessing and a curse, enriching the empire while also bringing unseen dangers. In the end, trade with China remained one of Byzantium's most enduring legacies. It connected two of the world's greatest civilizations, bridged continents, and fueled the empire's economy for centuries. Even as empires rose and fell, as wars raged and plagues spread, the Byzantines never lost sight of the value of commerce. Their determination to maintain ties with the Far East helped shape not only their own destiny, but also the story of global trade. When Constantinople finally fell in 1453, the great markets went silent, and the world lost its most vibrant crossroads. But for nearly 1,000 years, the Byzantine Empire stood at the heart of an international network that stretched from the Mediterranean to the Pacific. Its trade with China was not just about silk or spices. It was about survival, prestige, and connection. It was a testament to the empire's resilience and ambition, proving that even in times of war and crisis, the Byzantines understood the power of trade to shape history.